Whichever one it is, I forget. Well, I keep forgetting, damn it. Man, by virtue of that unique feature of his, is the only creature who can distract himself to death without actually dying. The ordinary believe that they're naturally conscious, while a mystic knows he's not unless he made himself so. If you take your normal talking to yourself as thinking and you don't know what thinking is, and if you take your talking to yourself to be you doing the talking, then you haven't got a clue as to what is you. Is he in? Man is the sole creature who can be at home and not be at home simultaneously. Anyone who speaks of themselves in the context of their race, religion, nationality, or culture is too normal and bovinian to have anything profitable to convey. Auto thoughts, what men take to be their mind and ultimately themselves. A lad headed toward the city was advised by his dad, the too simple and the overly sophisticated are little to be trusted. One man had a thing on a leash. At least sometimes he had it on a leash. For when he'd think about it, he did, and when he didn't, he didn't. One man would periodically feel sorry for himself, but was disturbed by the fact of how much he enjoyed it. But after considering how scarce is pleasure in life, he got over it. A more intense study reveals that there is no mind, only the endless flow of thoughts. Proof? Stop thought, then find the mind. All complaints of common men arise from common man. All complaints of common man arise from his being common. 'Tis only in myth that magical knights do battle with pain with no name. Everyone is born with a house and the inclination to live partially out of doors. The basic ritualism of man is repetitive thought and word. Biography, what men write when they run out of all other forms of fiction. Humans, the only creatures who believe that they're in constant danger of drowning. Life, the only ocean in which everyone believes that they're drowning. Yet no one ever does. See, here's the unseen hobble. You can live 70 normal years without thinking about it. Second verse. You can live 70 normal years without thinking about it unless someone mentions the fact and you instantly, just for a moment, believe that you do. In one world, they had no con men. They didn't need any. They had life in each other. There are two yous possible. The automatic you and the thought stopped and I'm aware that I am me, you. Those who cry out for salvation, redemption, and deliverance are one and all looking in the wrong direction. One guy says, the only hope I have for humanity is that they're not actually serious. The game theory. The theory that it's a game is no theory, unless you're blindly in the midst of it. The simple love simple surprises, but hate complex ones. Boo. Food. Everything one man ate tried to come back up. Then he realized it was his thinking. Ritualism's greatest danger to those on the great adventure is its denial of originality and creativity. Gifts and presents. Nothing means anything if you're not home to receive it. If consciousness was only the mind, and the mind was a pail, thoughts would be an endless ocean. Okay, another way. If the mind was a pail, done consciousness is the Pacific. Metaphors you use more than 47 times are like peels you try to put back on oranges. Knights knowingly staying with dwarfs will themselves begin to shrink. Yep, it's true in an individual neural sense as well. The time add up. It only takes a moment to realize your interest in the mystical way. Then perhaps 10 years to find your particular one, then another 20 or so to find you. How to tell that your thoughts are normal? They're always bitching and complaining, even when you're by yourself. On one world, their original symbolism for sin and evil was a carousel. Then as they became more civilized and technologically advanced, they changed it to a highway cloverleaf. And once they reached even higher levels of sophistication and theoretical speculation, they changed it to a Mobius strip. See, instead of Satan and Lucifer and the evil one. Progress in the land that doesn't exist. One man had an idea. Then he had two. Then three. Then he went back to just one. Life-saving techniques. Anyone who tells you personal anecdotes or uses himself as an example is in the same pool as you. The dumb love to talk about themselves because they figure you're too dumb to notice. The reason that, under ordinary circumstances, men cannot perceive of what the mind truly is and is up to is the same as why a mouth cannot bite itself. Advanced Scout's addendum: it is possible for a mouth to bite itself if time is stopped. One man had a sack full of stuff, and when he took the stuff out, the sack disappeared. To some of the mystically inclined, original, non-standard ideas are like addictive bullets. One man had the ability to concentrate, but only when he thought about it. How to mystically handle talking about your personal life. Always speak in generalities, be vague, never specific. Better yet, lie or shut up. There's a magical bird in the midst of the flock, but only is seen when flight is arrested. Reverence expressed. One guy got it down to one 3-word prayer. Life, you rascal. Travel definition for the common man. Originality. A foreign land. Ships not going anywhere like to fire at others sitting in the harbor. One man's philosophy was finally distilled to these 4 words: life, what a rascal. Mystics definition. Mystics, the only people in the world who can know something and then know it even better 20 years later. And better yet, 20 years after that. One man ultimately only used ordinary thinking as a stunt double for conscious awareness. A real mystic's motto: if you don't do it, nobody will. And even if you do, it's still iffy. Whereas, long about here, most men would fold their hand to the sound of read 'em and weep. The more alert, if they realize it's going to make them weak, don't read them. Since all suffering unique to man is of a specific, incurable variety, what is to be gained from the perusal and consideration of specious prescriptions? On the planet of hair shirts, when they really want to suffer, they will wear men. Though this is considered gauche in that it's gross overkill. One man found the end of a strange string that led to he knew not where. But just the end itself was so neat that he didn't care. Before I get into what I was going to say tonight, pick up one piece from last time. We were talking about specifically rituals and how they will ultimately, or very quickly, to be a little more specific, that rituals will quickly begin to distract from the aim for which they were originally conceived. And shortly after that, very easily, will actually displace them. And just sort of a heavy semicolon to last week and the whole idea of that sort of ritualism. Again, the great world of the tango and the two parties, their participation, the seduction of word and thought, and of what appears to be one person speaking, one person listening, or one person leading and one person following in such a dance. Consider two things. These kinds of little religious and so-called mystical or would-be mystical cults that do pop up, and I was pointing out that even the crudest of religion can scarce hold on to even enough money to pay for gas to move the tent from one city to another without some ritual, if it's nothing else other than, here I am again this year, give me money. That there has to be some sort of ritualistic behavior, ritualism. Consider this. It's real obvious and people never think about it. That's why I was going to wrap it up for you for the time being. Those that end up presenting themselves to be some sort of spiritual leader. I'm talking about the freelance variety, not someone who worked their way up, as they call it, which I don't like to think about. In the church, how you work your... At any rate, self-appointed, self-proclaimed spiritual leaders, to give them the greatest possible due. Let's say that even some of them have a one-shot, low-level mystical experience. Not all of the self-appointed ones even have that much. But let's give them that much credit. There's one thing about the ritualism that springs from their end of it, of their presentation of it, that will very quickly turn into some sort of worship of the leader. And it usually takes them a little bit, because at first they're ashamed. They think, well, I can't ask these people to really treat me like a god. And I don't know, it probably takes them getting on drugs or drunk or something the first time and actually do it and find out that their little following has just been, they just leap for joy. Like, well, why did it take you so long? And then he thinks, why the hell did it take me so long? You know, they're eating it up. But I want to point out a particular reason. It's not just psychological, but it's, to use common terminology and to conclude this for tonight, they end up offering as part of the ritual is to treat me with great reverence, please me. And another offshoot of that, I'll get to that more from the other side in just 1 second, but another offshoot, since I'm here, is that also notice part of what offends the general mainstream public when they hear about these freelance spiritual leaders, self-appointed, is they will also, simultaneously with finding out that not only can they pull this on their would-be flock, the flock will insist on it. Just loves it. They will also then begin to imagine, without fail, and to speak of, to dream of, that they have physical, magical powers. You all know that. They will, according to how strange it strikes you, probably compared to your own background, it'll be everything from that they can read the mind of those who show up, or that they talk to God directly, or they talk to dead Sufi prophets, who knows, but that they're not going to die is always the safest one, because they're not around to take the damn heat and the embarrassment when it don't work. But people still fall for it. But at any rate, I was going to point out, they always end up dreaming of and claiming that they have some sort of magical powers for one reason, a very simple reason. That is that these one-shot guys, ones that had one little hint of something, they sense, quite correctly, that they're not going any further They're not going to understand any more. They're not going to become any more conscious than they are. So what's left? From the other view, the other side of the podium, their stage, their platform, is the followers end up insisting on, expecting, and always receiving directions of ritualism in the religion, in the cult, whatever it is. And they end up either wanting to please the gods by following the 10 Commandments or the 4 Commandments or the 7 suggestions. or and let me give this fictional would-be flock some credit, that they all have a little hint. They have a real strong suspicion and some small taste of the mystical path of being more conscious. That they're not just absolute fruitcakes and half-burned-out Molotov cocktails that went down the wrong alleyway. They end up then wanting to please somebody, if not the gods, and they normally like to be able to have somebody, an alive leader, to try and please them. Why? Again, it's very simple. They know they're not ever going to please themselves. It's just as plain as the biggest wart you ever saw in the world's biggest nose. But at the ordinary level, it is taken in a most positive manner. It shows how reverent the people are, how worshipful, how humble they are. That all they talk about is wanting to please Allah, wanting to please the church, wanting to please their rabbi. But God himself, that's the great one because he's not around. But wanting to please them, and that they devote their life, that they will say, they will claim in a forthright manner that they put their own personal desires, whenever they can remember to, of course, in the back seat. To what they want to do. They'd like to please themselves. Sure, they'd like to be rich and famous. Sure, they'd like to be out there having fun. Sure. But they're going to have to put that sort of thing in abeyance, because their first job, now that they understand the holy duty of a would-be holy man or woman, is to please God. And we're just used to hearing it. Everybody goes, well, my, how nice. They only do it out of desperation. They got one sense of what it would be to actually be religious, to be more conscious, and how pleasing it would be, and they know they're never going to reach it. They're never going to please themselves any more than they are right now. So, what's left? Try to please somebody else. And it seems to be, though, of a higher nature, or a more metaphysical nature, when it's within the context of stained glass windows and taking off your shoes, or putting on your shoes, or wearing your shoes on your head, or wearing your hat backwards. When there's some kind of ritual involved, and it's real quiet, and nobody's drunk that you know of, and there's no loud music and dancing, and people are trying to pin each other in the corner sexually, you think, wait a minute, this has possible metaphysical significance. Especially since it seems to be useless. I want you to try to use your mind, I know you can, to picture something. To picture something. Don't... and I will draw, sort of. I want you to picture there are 2 possible yous that a person can have. And one of them, imagine that this is a large pool, a large lake, but I started calling it a pool. Just imagine it over here. Well, ooh! The automatic U pool, and then this one I can't draw, but so just to keep it sort of balanced, so just would be very indistinct, and it wouldn't necessarily be in the same configuration. This one would be one that was driven. It would be awareness driven. It would not be automatic. I was going to try to make it a little, maybe with this kind of picture, a little clearer and more common. The automatic U pool is a common pool in which everyone is born. And I suggest you, since you showed up or tuned in, if you're going to listen to it, I strongly recommend, at least for the time being, for the night, actually picture this huge pool and that 6 billion people are in it. You're born in that pool. It is the common pool of all of us. It is also the pool in which the automatic you is born. It takes being in that pool for the automatic you to arise. It's just the automatic you. If whatever an ordinary person thinks, well, this is me, that's the automatic you. In that common pool, once you see it in a certain way and understand that everybody is there, and it's not just a commentary on the collective herd instincts of man. It's got nothing to do with instincts. You were friggin' born there. It doesn't take an instinct to think, well, I'll go find the pool where the rest of the humans are hanging around. You don't have to look. You were born there. You don't have to think, well, I will in some way try to develop my personality. I want to be. You don't have to worry about anything. The common pool, the automatic you pool, is the common mental pool. Now let's forget the physical side, because you know that's not of any interest. It's not of any useful commentary, that we are always talking about man above the level of consciousness. That special feature he has. The automatic you pool is the common mental pool. And listen, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to cover it. I'm going to describe the more important aspects of that pool. It is bound. That is, it has boundaries. It is a closed pool. Now this is all by its very nature. This has nothing to do with man. Let me do the preface again. The automatic you pool is the common mental pool of man, and is by its very nature, before we got here, by its very nature it is closed, bounded, self-centered and referential, incestuous, cannibalistic, parasitic, plagiaristic, always predictable and repetitive. And everyone is playing in everyone else's bathwater. Every complaint that ordinary men have, once you see it in a certain way, the specific complaints are meaningless. They're irrelevant. When men cry out for salvation or redemption, which would normally be in the context of religion, or when they cry out that they want freedom, which would generally fall within, nowadays, psychology, if not politics, they're all crying for one simple thing. If you will picture this, they want out of that first pool. That is it. It does not come any plainer than that. I could not be more blunt, unless I actually tried to tell you the secret. But as far as using ordinary terms and pictures, that is as plain and obvious. You remember that big nose I told you, the big wart? Quadruple it. Men want one thing, people who want to improve themselves. But all sane men, which is all we really talk about here, all ordinary, reasonable, sane, common, routine, mundane, John Q. and Jane Q. public, all they want is to get out of the automatic you pool. That is all that every form of religion and ritualistic behavior is. That's every drug that people take, which is hardly worth mentioning because it is so distracting, it's so self-defeating. It just makes you sink lower in the water for as long as the drugs hold out, but by, of course, as we all know, giving you the ability to dream that you're, by God, are swimming so fast you're about to take off like a goose. That you can imagine you're going to fly out of there. But, so let's just skip drugs and alcohol. That's just... But all religious activity, all prayer, all people, and I'm not making, as you know, fun of religion or psychology, but I'm telling you what it is. No matter... And this covers everything. I tried to take you a range from psychology to religion, politics, all forms of self-improvement. But think about religion. no matter what it's called, no matter how otherworldly it finally becomes, because it simply becomes ritualism, and that is the behavior, the rituals themselves actually displace the aim that they originally had. The aim they originally had was to be godlike, to be Christ-like, or to be a good Jew, or a true servant of God, of Allah, a real Muhammad or Abdullah. All of that, people very quickly, as I was doing my opening closing for last time, that is, people desiring rituals because they sense it, correctly so. Men sense after that first glimpse, that first inkling, that first itch, that they would like to be more conscious, that they would like to get out of their present position. They don't know what it is. I want to grow. I want to blossom. I want to do so-and-so. And you don't know why. Then it ends up in words. I'd like to be a priest. I'd like to be a concert pianist. I'd like to be a famous author. Whatever it comes out. But what you're saying is I want to just burst out like the mighty oak coming out of the acorn, the butterfly coming out of the larva stage. But after that one little bit, you can feel it in yourself. You went through it. We'll assume all of you got past it. It didn't choke on it. But after that one little bit, very shortly, it is like resignation to the fact that it's not going anywhere. Nobody knows how to analyze. I could describe it better by playing around with it. You can do it yourself. You can feel it yourself. They know they're not really going any further. And so that is where ritualism takes over. And that's where they end up being involved with an activity, and the activity simply serves to distract them, to displace, but at least distracts. They could understand that much probably. Displace, they would never be able to swallow. But it at least distracts them from the fact that if I keep lighting candles, doing rosaries, going to confession, even if somebody forced me to admit, are you actually a good Catholic? Could you call yourself a Catholic? And you go, no. Because of all the naughty things in my heart. Read mind. But, and they would say, well, what are you going to do? I spend all my waking hours, as much as possible, in the church, involved with the rituals of the church. All of that is one simple desire, is people want to get out of the automatic U pool. When people undertake counseling, when people go see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, it is exactly the same thing. And any specific complaints, they can have specific complaints ranging all the way from spiritual, such as I'm a sinner, I feel unworthy, and they feel it's some religious curse, or they can end up at a psychiatrist's office saying I am suffering feelings of inadequacy that surely come from some childhood subconscious trauma. No matter how they describe it, once you understand what it is, the specific complaints are absolutely meaningless. It's not being hard, it's not being sarcastic, it's not dismissing other people's problems, because to them they're quite real, and all of you felt them. But the problem is simple. And when you start having specific complaints and take them seriously, they become ritualistic. They distract you from this. All anybody wants on this planet who is reasonably sane, not by my definition, by humanity, it's just an ordinary person. No matter how inadequate, no matter how depressed they can get, no matter what kinds of fits of anger they have, whatever their personal quote problems are, it amounts to one thing. The specifics, the ones they enunciate, are absolutely meaningless. All they want is out. Looked at another way, in that pool, would you care for me to describe what it is again by its very nature, all right? It is closed. It is bound. It is self-centered and referential, incestuous, cannibalistic, parasitic, plagiaristic, and always predictable and repetitive. And also, everyone is playing in everyone else's bathwater. In that pool, everything is the same. There are no cures in the pool. There is no redemption in the pool. There is no salvation in the pool. There is no freedom in the pool. I sure hope some of you give this some momentary, as long as it takes serious thought. You've got to understand, once you realize that pool is exactly my first comments, my first description is closed and bound. So I drew an actual perimeter to the pool. Inside that pool, any idea of freedom is silly once you see it. Any idea of redemption, save me from this pool. That is, you're turning to other people in the pool and saying, save me, help me. And there's always somebody. I mean, they'll be within whispering distance in that pool. Somebody go, oh, well, glad you asked. Here's my card, or I don't have one, but I'll have some tomorrow. Yes. Anyone in the pool, how are they going to help you get out of the pool? Now remember, we're talking mentally, because physically we're all in the pool, we're all staying here on the planet. But someone who says, yes, I understand, and they start describing how they can lead you spiritually, intellectually, to a promised land of freedom, of salvation, redemption, the alleviation of all sin and guilt, whatever it is, it really amounts to it's either salvation, redemption, or freedom, which are all the same thing, but give you a little mind, 3 things to think about. So if you give 2, people go, all right, no. If you give 1, it's too simple. You give 3, it almost makes you have to stop and go, all right, 1, 2, 3. And you have to remember the 3 while I keep talking. Why do you think I keep doing them in 3s? Why do you think it's so much done in ordinary life, although they don't know why they do it? It just sounds right. Just writers and speakers and speech writers to come up, and it's always a triumvirate of things. Well, your president has in mind for the new tax change to go to at least have da-da-da and da-da-da and da-da-da-da. Everybody knows it. The Father, Son, the Holy Ghost. There are no cures. There are no solutions. There is no redemption. There is no salvation. There is no freedom in the automatic U-pool. Everything that's there is there. It is all the same. And all that happens, it gets stirred up, gets mixed around, and people do splash about. People do move about and they play, but you're all in the same pool. Anyone in that pool has no idea how to get you out. And that's ain't worthwhile, because it's somebody else knowing how to get you out is not of any value, because nobody else knows how to get you out. You want me to make that 3, or you want me to just leave it at that? It's as long as you are in the pool. Let's forget other people now. This is not an attack on faux mystics, because it's your responsibility. Nobody else has got any responsibility. Anybody that takes responsibility for you, they deserve it. You deserve it. Anybody you turn to and say, can you help save me? And they go, yes. By God, you people found each other. I mean, here you are at what's supposed to be the 24-hour-a-day tango palace, but evidently every other cheap whore and pimp and warty-looking ugly person has left, and it's just you and him or her, at least momentarily, there alone. Now, if I don't get laid by this person, I won't get laid. If I don't dance with them, and you go, can you help me? And they go, what do you think I'm here for? You deserve each other. It's a beautiful match. As long as don't send me photographs of yourself together. I have a queasy constitution. I don't. Bad enough I got a mirror. I don't need to look at your tango photographs. There is simply, what I want you to understand, we're back to the person now. Let's say you, generically. It's not an attack on those who offer to help, because I've covered that. You should surely see it. Anybody in that pool cannot help you. They can talk to you. You can dance with them. You can splash about. You can do all sorts of things. Water ballet. You can do anything you want to in that pool, but you're in the pool. Now back to your side of it, though, you generically. You understand the folly, the absolute folly, not theoretical. And not that you just not quite find the exact way to do it, or that you're lacking some small key, some small trick. Maybe you need this one final set of magical, mystical watcher wings. Inside that pool, bound, closed, self-centered, self-referential, incestuous, cannibalistic, it's bound. That should be enough to tell you it is a closed, bound lake, a pool. Inside of that, there is no question, it's just folly, it's just dreams, it's just talk of any salvation, any redemption, any freedom. Part of what keeps it going, part of what keeps ordinary minds stable and playing this fallacious dance, in a sense, is that within the confines of the lake you evidently do have some freedom. Because if I stood there on the lake and I hollered, well, everyone in the automatic U lake has no freedom and any idea is silly, then some man sitting right here can go, silly? You're the one silly. And he can go, uh-huh. And if I'm not that impressed, he can begin to really splash and run. Theoretically, he could run nearly 9,000 miles. He could run around the earth, splashing all the way and hollering back at me, look at this, look at this. Who's chained me down? I'm free. Yeah. I repeat though, see, here's the trick. People will do that. That's the only thing that keeps them sane. We've been through this. If you knew better, or if you just tried to repeat this that you heard me say tonight to somebody else to say, you're not free, and you told them a story like that, shame on you. It wouldn't really hurt them to hear it, but it's a waste of time. But here it is, people still insist that that is some form of freedom. It's what keeps them sane and stable, and yet they know. They know that that is not getting out of the automatic U-pool. They know that they are not more conscious, and it's not really the matter of taking an ordinary person, say a religious person, and say, well, you've been faithfully following the tenets of such and such religion. They go, yes. Because you felt in some way that you were an incomplete person. Yes. That normally turns into sin and guilt and that you missed the mark in some way. But you felt as though you were an unfinished person, that there was something you additionally needed to do. And I went, yes. And so you went to the church, yes. And you've been there faithfully, yes. And you say, well, do you feel now redeemed? Have you actually been made anew? Have you actually had whatever the flaw was cured? And they know they haven't. In other words, they know that that dissatisfaction, that good, healthy, human, natural dissatisfaction of popping up there in the common pool with everyone else, and not just you, but everyone, wants out of that pool. If they don't want out, they are, per force, insane. Not normal, not mainstream. Which, again, is outside our field of interest. But I want you to understand that every ordinary person on this planet, every sane person, by their definition, by humanity's, by life's definition of sane, they want out of the automatic U pool. They do not want to be this automatic thing that is the pool in them. Everybody had that thing originally. All sane people, it's of no consequence, but they still have it. It can still be touched. They don't necessarily like for it to be touched. They will not necessarily gain from it. They will not necessarily pursue it. That if in some way you got to them and went, hey, and you talked about that, and they went, you're right. All it does is kind of dispirit them. They think, Jesus, here I am 65 years old, and I'm not all that happy about life anyway. And then you had to point that out. But look at it very simply, because I'm being very blunt, and it's a very decent, if I may say so, picturization. I don't know, maybe I'll come up with a better one some other day, some other lifetime. But everyone is born there, and they want out. It is healthy. It is natural. That is what makes humanity as a whole apparently progress. Become gradually more conscious, more intellectual, more driven by the mind than the body. But each individual person wants out of that automatic U pool. From that springs all the other forms, or all forms of complaints, all criticism, all carping. But every complaint a man has, but see, ordinary people find it to be such a wide range of complaints that we have specializations. We have priests, we have psychiatrists, we have marriage counselors, we have baby psychiatrists, child psychiatrists, we have senior psychiatrists, we have, well, you know, we've got, just look in the phone book, and under the headings, if it's not auto repair or air conditioning or plumbing, it's probably some sort of specialization having to do with the human spirit. It's like, you know, when you're not going anywhere, why not have 1,000 buses? Mao at one time was close, but he got revolution and roses and stuff mixed up. What he really meant, or he should have meant, was if you're not going anywhere, let a billion buses bloom. Does anybody follow all that? In other words, since ordinary people. All right. I'll go back and... Well, it's always a little, when some of you, when it gets one of those suddenly off the top of my, whatever it is, and just pieces of it, one or two people go, huh, and then somebody goes, Mao, and then they go, what the hell, I heard this again. Well, his was something about let 1,000 revolutions bloom. That was one of his weak moments. He thought he was dying, going to lose power anyway, and figured, what the hell do I care? It had no bearing on this. I just couldn't resist using it as a basis of a further allusion. The point is, when people understand, when people sense, after that original awareness that they do not want to be what they are, no matter who you are, no matter how you look, it's not just that, but at the age that when you first had a hint of the blooming of man, the blooming of the intellect, of consciousness, that everyone wants out of the automatic pool, that they suddenly realize, this is me. It took you a while. You became a little man or woman. Your family now talked to you, and you could recognize your name as well as the dog could. Yeah, a little bit better. But it did not take long. I didn't mean to get back into childhood chronology, but everybody goes through this, that once apparently that you have a personality, once that there is this sensation of my old equation of I plus not I, that there is a difference between you and out there, and that you now are you. Very shortly, in all children, it doesn't mean anything. Nobody ever notices it. But very shortly, after that happens, and I could describe it psychologically, but that's not the point, but it would almost be as though they now have to become responsible to external forces. That now suddenly, it seems to them, that now that they know who they are, this big guy or big woman can say, hey, Sammy, and you go, yeah, don't do that. But before you knew that you were Sammy, nobody could tell you not to do that. Nobody could go, shame on you. Nobody could say, boy, next time I'll get you. There was no harshness to life. There was no consequences to life. You ate, you threw up, you ate, you did in your pants, you fell over, you stood up, they knocked you down. It just happened. But once you became an individual, once you became conscious enough to know that you were somebody external to the circumstances, then the circumstances, to which your mother and father, or whoever it was, then seemed to begin to make demands of you that made no sense, had nothing to do with survival. And every child, every sane, genetically sound child has that first blush. They don't know how to describe it. They didn't miss anything. But it's as though they wish, I wish this hadn't happened. Yeah. They've got me locked into now being me, being Sammy, and I want out of here. Because it first strikes one, and it's not psychological, I know it sounds this way, but it strikes someone that you made a bad bargain and didn't even mean to. You were forced down. You were tricked into signing this contract. You were tricked into becoming this individual, and as soon as you were, these big old fat large faces, they got down and went, Sammy, and you went, yeah, and you could be looking away and you holler, Sammy, and you go, yeah, and they would just hug you and pat you and give you something good to eat, and you thought, I'm onto something. All they got to do is respond, and they go, Sammy. And then by God, though, it wasn't but a matter of days, if not hours, that you did that. And it was such a grand payoff. Everybody, oh, how great. He knows who he is. And they would all call neighbors. It wasn't but a day later. They suddenly poop in the floor, and a voice hollers, Sammy. And you go, yeah. You go, don't do that. And they slap your little hand, or they rub your nose in, according to... If it were psychological, if that's all it were, you understand the kid would have this feeling like, I have been sucked into, I was tricked. I was conned into thinking I was getting a bargain. It's no bargain. I want out of here. Not out of the house. I want out of here. I want out of Sammy. It is not that. It's not simply psychological. That would be the easiest way to describe it. It is that all sane humans want out of the automatic you pool. Very shortly, it's just the way life is. It's not psychological. It's not personal. It's not societal. It has nothing to do with your particular circumstances or conditions at the time. It's just that, very shortly, it's just the workings, the machinery, the arrangement of the machinery of life is such that you give it up. It's just not going to happen. This is as far as you're going. But the desire to get out of being the automatic you does not cease in ordinary people. It comes out in the crudest, in the most simplistic of ways. Do I have to do them again? Trying to get rich. Trying to lose weight. Trying to quit drinking. Trying to move to a better neighborhood. Trying to be religious. Trying to untangle your subconscious memories. Since you don't have any, you have to go pay somebody to talk to you. You start going, well, yeah, I do have some. You'll do almost anything. And it's not a matter that's useless. It's a matter of you singing. It's not a matter of me saying that all that's useless and it's simply mechanical, ritualistic, cul-de-sac behavior and effort. It's not that. It's for you to see that in that pool, all individual complaints, you understand the full meaning of meaningless, don't you? I mean, isn't that clear enough? Impertinent. It has no relationship to what's going on. And yet people say, well, I have very specific complaints. In fact, I might try to undertake living a greater spiritual life. I might get interested in things mystical if it weren't for how much my wife bugs me or how much my mother's memory of how much she despised me stays on me. If I did not feel so unworthy. They are all literally meaningless insofar as getting out of the pool. There's no stronger word than meaningless and impertinent. It can make it very simple. I was hoping and suggesting to some of you to see it in your own mind that there is the same picture. Now this thing exists. I say in its minute picturization and metaphor. This exists. And it also exists in here. There is the automatic you. Every form of mysticism, no matter what it's ever been called, no matter the examples I can drag up, the publicly well-known ones and me inferring obscure ones, they all go down that same track from Paris headed toward Istanbul. They all start, every mystical path, every mystical way starts out in one place. And that's the person, the individual, realizing that I am an automatic me. And not all this, not physically. That can be used, something to do, something to pass the time away. It can be used as a kind of self-instructive tool. But the body is automatic. The more automatic the body is, the better off you are. From the level of consciousness, down. But every mystical path starts out at one place. But even if it doesn't start, the dream, the idea, the description, the notion of a mystical path, everyone, every culture, every nationality, every epoch started at one place, and that was a person. Right there in the pool. The automatic me pool, the automatic you pool. And they realize, I want out of here. And they understand it at least enough to verbalize it to themselves or to somebody. That is the beginning of all mystical paths. There's not but one, but that is the beginning of all of them. Everybody in there, let me repeat, everyone in the pool, out of the 6 billion people on this planet that by their own definition at any particular time are sane and relatively sane and ordinary, they all want out. It couldn't be simpler than that, at least me to put it to you. Every sane person wants out of total submersion in the automatic you pool. To whatever degree they can exercise any effort, to the same degree that they say that they willfully make themselves go to church and pray, or that they make themselves get up at 5 in the morning and sit there and meditate on the beautiful face of some saint or a Buddha or an icon, or some symbolism that supposedly represents a greater state of awareness or spiritual development, whatever it is, to the same degree that they exercise that effort, the effort, no matter how small, is this little minute push against the automatic runnings of this in their own mind. That's it. But the efforts are so small. the efforts are so inconsistent. I can do better than small, you people. Some of you know better. It's not the smallness, because there's either effort or not effort. It is the persistence of it. And after that, it's simply magic. Nothing else to say. The persistence is the only thing that will ever get one's train even on the track in Paris. Then it begins, it's almost spurious verbally to start describing it after that, to say, well, you've got to at least be persistent in your kind of effort to try and transcend the automatic you. Or there was some more slipped in on you. There was one toward the end that said that there is a magical bird in the midst of the flock, but is only seen when flight is arrested. What would be true meditation? What would be the enlightened? What would be the Satori brand of meditation? It's the arresting of flight. Am I safe in assuming that you people, no matter what you figured immediately, I'm not talking about flocks of birds? And then suddenly you go, and the flock freezes in the air? Of course, maybe I am. If you think I am, at least it shows where you're standing in the pool. Everyone who is sane wants escape from the automatic them. But look how displaced, look how diffused become the efforts when you end up praying externally, when you end up turning your attention to some other person, to some organization. There is nowhere to look. Every organization, no matter how fancy the buildings, every other individual offering to help, no matter their position, their title, their funny, impressive costume, is in the pool with you. The Catholic Church is in the pool. The United States of America is in the pool. Western psychiatry is in the pool. Eastern psychiatry is in the pool. Everything that man conceives of at the automatic level is in the pool. Any effort, any ritualistic honoring, any attempt to be reverent toward something else in the pool, what do you expect from that? The other pool, as I said, take all the descriptions I gave of the automatic you pool, and they do not apply. And it is almost misspeak to describe it specifically. But take all the descriptions I did give of the automatic you pool, and if you could put together the story of the magical bird in the midst of the flock, which can only be seen when flight is arrested, does it give you any suggestion as to what the other pool would be? I will give it a name. I'd already mentioned that a while ago for the time being. That we could call the two possible yous. I slipped in one of the news items in the midst of everything that said there are two yous possible. The automatic you and the thought is stopped and I'm aware that I am me, you. I can shorten that and call it the automatic you pool and the awareness-driven pool, because that is a fair description of the alternative, the other possibility. You're either the automatic you, and you can be the automatic you if you don't know this, and I don't know what you know. You can be the automatic you all day and think it was you. But that's no big deal. A good, sane, ordinary person can be the automatic them 70 years and never know any better, and never even sense or have no experience. They do sense it if it's pointed out, but they have no experience in the other potential you. It is awareness driven, I could call it consciousness driven or driven consciously. I even slipped in another term, if anybody heard it and it made any sense in the midst of the news items, I called it done consciousness. It's a done you. Because the you you're talking about, that we're talking about, that I'm talking about, you understand, is you at the conscious level. I'm not talking about anybody you physically. That doesn't make a rat's ass who you are physically. It's above the level of consciousness. And so I slipped in one term, it's a done consciousness, or a done you, because it's only you if you do it. It never gets done. A priest can't do you consciously. A priest can't, a psychiatrist can't do you. No one can make you more conscious. It seems to take people, I hate to tell you this, I don't know whether I should. It seems to take people more than a few years, even of what they consider to be fairly extensive interest and participation in something like this, for it to ever strike them see, this term's already been used out in public, but I'll do it and then tell you what I mean. That nobody can do it for you. But hell, you can hear that in the Boy Scouts. You can hear that at Weight Watchers or Alcoholics Anonymous. Of course, they tell you nobody can do it but you, but there they are attempting to help you. You're not supposed to think about it. It takes people, it takes the most sincere would-be mystic more than a few years. This is, by the way, in the mystical business, this is just one of those things that it's a known fact. It takes the best of people, the most interested of people, more than a few years to ever realize that no one can do anything for me. They might turn to whoever they'd been hanging around and go, listen, I can't thank you enough. I wouldn't even be this far if it wasn't for you, but you can't do it. It is both a great revelation because it's the thing you already knew, and it's also kind of a great shocker, and it's also kind of a great annoyer. Because you realize, great God Almighty, if this was any simpler, I should shoot myself or die of terminal embarrassment. It could not be simpler. I don't need candles, prayer beads. I don't need a meditation mat. I don't need dog do. I know exactly what it is. And you think, yeah, but you knew that. Well, yeah, I knew it, but I didn't know it like that. In the automatic you-poo, you don't know anything. You know to splash around, stir up the water, look around and think, well, if I do drown, maybe somebody will help. Yeah, right. Or maybe somebody will help teach me to take off like a spruce goose and actually fly from the surface of this lake. You cannot get out of that lake. That's not the point. Not the you that's in there. It's not to get out of there. That's the trick that keeps people there. They think, well, I'll improve myself and kind of redo Darwinism, and I'll come out of the water and actually be a person and learn to fly. You have to spring from that lake to the other one. God, is it hard? It takes that long. What?